I'm here with Saj Hussain. He's a friend, a fellow property investor. He specializes in JV. He's got an exceptionally inspiring story. So we're going to go under the bonnet, ask him some really nice questions because I like him. He's from Birmingham. I'm not going to hold that against him. But then we're going to go deep under the bonnet and ask some uncomfortable questions, and let's see how Saj answers them, and let's see how much information we can get out of him, because I think his whole concept is not to answer any question, and my concept is to try and get more information out of him. So watch the video to find out. So Saj, we'll start off nice and easy, and then depending on your answers, we'll see where we end up. And this room gets hot, by the way, so I'm pre-warning you.
I've got a feeling this is going to be an interrogation then.
It might be, only because I like you, by the way.
All right,
only because I like you. So tell us something interesting about yourself.
I'm 53 years old. Is that interesting? That's probably not that
You
interesting.
sound like an accountant. That's kind of an answer an accountant would give. But I know you qualified as a dentist, which we're going to come on to later. Something else which people might find interesting.
I was making money selling computer software when I was 13 in school, and the computer equipment I had at home was way more expensive, more powerful than they had in the school.
Now,
is that interesting?
I find that very interesting. And how did you get into that particular business at that early age?
Well, I didn't really see it as a business. What actually happened was I was just fascinated about computers at that time, this early 80s. My first computer was a Commodore VIC-20 and a Commodore 64, if anybody remembers that far back. And what you used to get was just the keyboard, computer, and that was it. Everything else you had to buy, so it was really a useless box on its own. And I struggled and persuaded my parents to buy me this box, which is pretty useless on its own. So then I needed to think of creative ways to really get some money to get the whole thing together, start making it work. And then I found somewhere where I could buy computer games, and I'd just take a little catalogue to school and try and sell them to the kids in school and make a few pounds that way, and very quickly it turned into a nice little thing. So I guess that's my version of selling sweets in school.
And what was the cost of that particular box that you convinced your parents to?
I think it was about £180 or £190. This is in probably 1982-ish.
That was a lot of money, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
So how did you... Yeah. What was the tactic that you actually used to convince your mum, I assume?
Yes. I wouldn't say it was a tactic. It was probably being a really difficult, annoying kid until they caved in. maybe it wasn't the best tactic. Maybe not one for my kids to be following right now.
But it worked.
Yeah, absolutely, it worked. Yeah. So but I've got to be fair on my parents. My father actually fell ill a long time ago. In the late 70s, he suffered from kidney failure, so he was ill for a very, very long time. And my mother was really a full-time carer, so we didn't really have much money. But at that sort of age, at 11, 12, 13, you don't understand this. You just understand the kids at school got nice designer clothes that everybody was into at that time. And why haven't I got why don't I have those things?
Mate, you went to a posh school. had you gone to the school I went to, there were no designer clothes, by the way. But we're here to talk about you'd say. So, quite interested in your background, because obviously you and I have a similar background. So I assume your parents emigrated, or your dad possibly emigrated to this country, probably late 50s, early 60s, there or thereabouts. Your mom probably came a bit later on, 5, 10, 15 years later. You probably had a tough upbringing, I assume. Your mom possibly didn't speak English, and perhaps learnt it later on, if she did. And that's a difficult environment to grow up in, and then from there to get to where you are now, it's a huge leap. What are some of the things that you learned in your childhood that you kind of feel have helped you either in the past or are helping you now to make progress?
Well, it's really interesting you make that point, and very clearly you picked out probably 90% of what you just said was correct, but we've never had that conversation before, but you kind of worked out what it is. And when you think about it that way, although it might be tough, we weren't alone. There were lots and lots of people in the same situation. So people who look around are all in the similar kind of situations. So it doesn't necessarily feel that you're doing something different. But what actually I did realise earlier on is that there were lots of people around me that had much more nicer lifestyles and things. And at that time, it was kind of 12, 13, 14, at that sort of age where really I started thinking about money, business. I want a different life. I don't want to just kind of go on this treadmill that everybody else seems to be following around me, which was they're going off university, getting a job. I'm thinking, business is where it all seems to be. You're more in control. And in the early 80s, it was stockbrokers. Everybody wanted to be a stockbroker, including me, because that was the aspirational way to get to wealth.
Apart from your mum, because she wanted you to be
a doctor, of course,
yeah,
absolutely. And I was definitely a major disappointment for him there. I said,
you're not the only one, by the way.
But I'm not going down that route. And so I think at that age, I realised you could have a lot more, but we just didn't have it. And it was why. But it is possible. So I was thinking, how can it? And I think that little bit was the key thing that ignited something inside me. How can I? And that's what really set me on that road to there's going to be a way, there's going to be a way. And that just built my determination, the fire in the belly, and it just this thing about it just there's nothing going to stop me. I'm not going to give up. As long as God wills it, there's nothing else in this world that's going to stop me.
So you obviously worked hard at school to some extent, because you went to university, you qualified as a dentist.
No, I didn't qualify as a dentist. I'm not sure where you got that one from. I thought that was a red herring you mentioned earlier on. I did just enough in school to get by. And at that time, it was easy to get into university.
Well, see, a long time ago, one of my teachers, stroke lecturers, said the pass mark to pass this particular exam is 50%. He said, a lot of you are going to work hard, you want a distinction, you're going to go for 70%, 75%, 90%. He said, the best advice I can give you is work towards getting 50%, because if you do, you've done just about enough to get through, so you've timed it really well and you put enough effort in. So if that applies to you as well, by the way,
I think I would have liked that teacher. I think we would have got on quite well, because for me it was just enough. And I was very social. I enjoyed spending time with other people, and I was the kid that was in school and college and university doing just about enough not to get kicked out.
Yeah. So. But no, you say that, but I think it's sometimes difficult for perhaps people to fully appreciate and understand some of the challenges that we face, because like I've said, your parents emigrate from Pakistan or Kashmir, you come here, perhaps both or one of them doesn't speak English, you haven't got anybody really to look up to, so to speak. There's not many or any people in your family who've perhaps gone to university who have become professionals. So you may have been, by the way, I'm assuming, one of the first, if not the first, in your family, wider family, maybe even in your street, in your area possibly, to have gone to university. That's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I was certainly in the early cohort of people within the family, extended family, that went off to university. But I think at that time it was just like the next thing to do. It's like leaving school and the next step is college. So you just assume it's the next thing to do and you just go along with it. Bearing in mind at that time you didn't have to borrow a load of money to get to university. You didn't come out with a load of debt. You'd actually got paid. You got given a grant to go to university. So it's almost like an extension of this college thing seems fun. Let's go and carry on for another few years.
Yeah.
That's, I think, how it started. And I think, looking back now, reflecting, I was still very business-minded whilst I was at college, but when I started getting to university, I was thinking even more about business than I was about what am I going to do after I finish university. It's a case where I just, with an entrepreneurial mind, you come up with about 50 ideas a day. It was one of those things.
Yeah. And then you obviously qualified as a dentist, and...
I didn't qualify as a dentist. I'm not sure.
You didn't?
No, I'm not a dentist.
Why do I think you're a dentist then?
No idea. I thought you were winding up earlier.
Seriously, I thought you were a dentist.
No, not at all.
So what did you qualify as? Did you qualify as anything?
You're assuming yourself qualified in something.
Yeah, I always thought you were a dentist, seriously. I don't know where I got that from.
No. So my interest, because I was interested in business, and computers, one of those things I was kind of really into very early on. It was computers and business that I just ended up doing. So my degree was in business and information system, which is essentially business and computing.
Okay.
And then later on, I went on, a few years later, I went back to do an MBA as well. And I think that was really because many of my friends at that time from university and college, they'd gone off to do professional jobs. And I was this I can't look in the mirror and think there's no hoper, thinking that I'm going to do well, and they're all kind of getting well-paid jobs and company cars and traveling around the world, and I'm doing this feast-famine thing every month in a self-employed business.
Yeah.
1 month you're doing okay, the other month you're struggling, and that for me, I think the MBA was an acknowledgement that actually, yes, I can hang on to something that I have some professional qualification.
I know. I think you're right. I talk to a lot of people in many different, using many different hats that I wear, and one of the things that I find interesting is what holds people back. They say, well, they either say, I'm not clever, I'm not educated, I don't have a degree, or I don't have an MBA or a master's, and yet other people that I see who perhaps stopped going to school at the age of 14, 15, 16 because they were expelled, and go on to do exceptionally well. And that kind of tells me it's not based on what you have, it's based on the kind of mindset or how you see things. I think so many people hold themselves back just because they don't have a degree, or they're not qualified as an accountant, dentist, doctor, IT, MBA, whatever it is, and they use that in their own mind, say, I'm not good enough, so I can't have that, or I can't be that. I mean, I even get that today. People say, oh, well, you're doing all this stuff in property, Shaz. You're an accountant, you understand numbers, you understand finance. It's easier for you than it is. I mean, I'm thinking, no. Accounting and finance, yes, of course, numbers are important in any business, no doubt about that, but you don't have to be an accountant to be good at property or real estate, So it's interesting you say that. So how did you get into the world of property then, Saj?
So I'll give a little bit of a backstory first. So before I left university, I started business selling computer equipment because it was just natural progression. I understood it, and this was a time where PCs were just starting to appear on desks. So for a few years, that business evolved and it went through different stages, and I ran it for about 15 years. And over that time, we did very well. We made very good money during that time. I think some of it was right timing, but also what I managed to do is really, I think my confidence grew beyond my ability. Oh, we can do this, and very quickly I managed to bring it all crashing down and basically pretty much just wipe myself out. So everything I'd kind of built up over 12, 15 years, everything was gone. And
what did you learn from that?
I learned so much more on the way down than I did on the way up, that's for sure. It was very, very humbling, for sure. And just understanding, how you manage people and business, or how I wasn't doing some of the things I should have been doing. Because I thought, oh, no, we were invincible, we could do this and we could do that. That really, I think, was a key changing point for me in my life, because I started thinking about, okay, I definitely don't want to go and work for somebody else. I don't want to, I felt unemployable. I'm not the kind of person that I want to go and just listen to somebody else telling me to do this and do that. I want to do my own thing. But when you're really struggling financially, and even to rub a couple of pennies together, it was really tough at that time. And I was thinking about property, and in an Asian household, people talk about property because it's a safe asset. Like, people talk about education, becoming a doctor. These are just like in your blood, in your DNA.
Yeah.
But I never really got involved in property. But I did buy one house, pretty much by accident, a few years earlier. And we'd sold that, or we'd already sold that by that point as well. But we'd made, I can't remember what it was now, something about 80 grand or something from that house, just because of the appreciation over time of owning that property. And my wife said to me, that's the one thing we did that probably made us more money, that we did the least amount of effort in. And it did really get me thinking, but my belief always was you need a lot of money to get into property, and I thought, we'll do it at some point in the future, and we're not worried about property right now. But actually, that's what got me thinking about, maybe I need to do something that's going to be beyond me and bigger than me, and it's going to outlast me.
Yeah.
And I've always been a fan of the Sunday Times Rich List, and probably nearly got every edition they ever had. And when you look at a list and you go through where people make money from and how they've earned it, so many of them either make money from property or they keep money in property. And that for me was really the thing that time, that period, that I thought, right, I'm going to do property. At that time, I had no idea how I was going to do it, how it's going to work. knew very little about property, but just this is what we're going to do.
So how did you get started then?
Absolutely painfully, and struggled very badly for about 2 years. I started going along to a few networking events. There weren't very many at that time. Started reading some books. Again, there wasn't as many books around. There's a few forums. This was pre-Facebook time. And really, I understood that it was possible to build a business in property and make money from property, and you didn't need property. What I struggled with was how. And people are also talking about, oh, you could do this. And I thought, who's going to lend money to me? Who's going to invest with me? How am I going to get a mortgage? There's all these things we were talking about earlier on about, yes, I'm a property investor, and you've got all this imposter syndrome going on, thinking, I'm a property investor, I'm going to, in terms of what I'm doing. And what I did manage to, I guess, almost stumble into is when I was trying all these lots of different things. I was hearing this speaker talk about this and that speaker talk about that. I think that's interesting. I could do that. Maybe I could go and figure that out. Is end up speaking to vendors directly about selling their property. This was probably now about 2007, 8 that time. And if you've been in property in a period of time, you'll know you were just falling over deals at that time. But the biggest challenge was that there weren't as many buyers. Nobody was buying. That's why there were so many deals. And what I ended up doing is finding good deals, good below market value property, and then really offering them to other people I'd met. So I was always very good at networking. I was good at meeting people, building relationships, keeping contact with people. And so I ended up being able to sell those deals onto people. And that's really what I did for a few years to start building up that experience, that confidence, learning different strategies, trying different things. And then from there evolved into starting to buy property with partners and funding the deals, and that's really how it evolved.
So you kind of took small baby steps first,
Definitely.
learn how the business works by going to networking, educating yourself, and then trying stuff. Of course, your experience of having been burnt in business once probably was sat at the back of your head. I
Very
guess,
cautious in my approach.
So you thought slow and steady. So for the benefit of our viewers who perhaps might not know much about property, if you can, in a couple of sentences, share with them what below market value means. But to go on further from that, why did you start with below market value?
I think one of the things I talk about a lot when someone's asking me about how do I get started in property, what's the right strategy, oh, I've seen this person make this much money, I should do this. I say, well, look, it's not just a strategy. You've got to think about, are you the right person to do that strategy in that location? All these things need to be right. As I say, all the stars all need to line up. You need to get your ducks in a row for that to work. So for example, like today, if I'm going to look for heavily discounted property in London, I'm probably going to struggle. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's exceptionally difficult. Whereas if you're trying to find distressed sellers in a distressed economy, it's much easier.
Of course.
And that's essentially what it was. So what it meant was that there was a credit crunch happening, there's a lot of people in negative equity, people were struggling to sell, people needed to sell, there were very few buyers. And what I was essentially doing was looking at what price point could they sell at. And let's say the property's worth £100,000. If they were able to sell at 70, 75,000, that meant there was an opportunity there for somebody to benefit from. It's like buying something in the sale. You might buy a jacket for £100 in one shop, you go to another shop, the exact same jacket's on for £75. Well, this one's selling it cheaper, it's exactly the same thing. And that's essentially what it was. And that value in between, all I was doing was really selling that value to somebody else. Here's an opportunity here for 25,000. Maybe you can pay me a couple of grand for that opportunity, and then just overseeing it, make sure it kind of completes the transaction. And that's essentially what I was doing. So I was looking for assets that were below its true worth, so there was some value on top of it, and charging a fee to provide that to somebody else.
And were you finding these through agents, through personal contact, through networking, or were you just trying to find motivated sellers by talking to them, finding out the situation? How are you kind of putting it all together?
Yeah, so the motivated sellers is really, when we talk about motivated sellers, someone that's keen to sell. Now, when I say, when I talk about motivated sellers, if someone's got a property up for sale on Rightmove, they're motivated. They're just not motivated enough for what we're looking for. So there's degrees of motivation. So what we're really looking for is someone that's heavily motivated, someone that's really keen to sell. And the way I was finding those, because I was learning so many little things from lots of different people, and I was, literally if I could do a course for 27 quid or buy a book for a tenner, that's really what I was doing, because I couldn't afford the £500 course or £1,000 or £2,000 for this at that time. It was just whatever bits of knowledge I can get, whatever bits of stuff I can pull together and just apply that. So if someone said you need to put postcards in shop windows, that's what I was doing. Someone says you need to do leaflets, that's what I was doing. So really I was trying lots and lots of different things, and those were starting to bring a trickle of deals in for me. So it wasn't really I followed this one strategy, produced this result, that worked, and I just replicated that. It wasn't that scientific. It almost came from a place of desperation. Look, I'll try anything, I just need to make it work. Failure is not an option. That's almost the attitude that I had.
And I think that works for a lot of people, because when your back is up against the wall, and to some extent where you feel you don't have much or any choice, I guess that's when we all perform at our best, don't we? Because it's do or die, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it comes back to that. I think about that time, when I in school, when I started getting that burning desire inside me that I want something more, and that flame is still there. My wife sometimes says to me, when's enough going to be enough? I said, well, enough was enough a long time ago, but it's going to be enough for me when they carry me out in a box, because I've got no intention of slowing or stopping down, because you've just got that desire. You just want to do more, achieve more, serve more, help more, make more, whatever it is. It just ends in more. Because it's just that psyche you have, you just need to keep going. And I'm not one that, has expensive designer clothes and, 50 grand watches or anything like that. I live a fairly simple, modest life. I have nice cars, I live in a nice house, and I go on a few nice holidays. That's it. Do you know what I mean? But that burning desire to do more is still there. However, we have to think about where does that come from, and how is it created. So when I look at my kids today, I have 4 kids, I've blessed 4 amazing kids. 3 of them work with me in the business, and they're never going to be, I believe, as driven, as motivated, as focused, as energized, wanting to jump out of bed at 5 in the morning as I am.
And why do you think that is?
Because their life is much more comfortable than my life was. And my parents worked hard in whatever way they could for me to have an easy life, which is the same story that will happen for many other people around us. Mine's not unique. Then we work hard so our kids have an easier life. And what happens is, I believe, is sometimes that drive and desire starts disappearing. And there's no need for them, as it were. Do you see? So I guess that's the challenge, and that's the my daily frustration as well.
No, it's interesting you say that, because you and I have a similar background in many ways, and I think about that a lot, because having been born and brought up in a challenging environment, where you talk about designer clothes or expensive cars, they were nowhere to be seen, by the way. It was hand-me-downs at best. And today, for example, I'll talk about my own situation scenario. My children, and I've got 4 children as well, they want to choose their own clothes, their own trainers, want their own iPads, iPhones, this, that, the other. It's never ending. And I do talk to my wife about this and say, are we compensating for the difficult life that we had as kids to give them an easier life? But at the same time, is that compensation, if I can call it that, are we making it worse for them?
Yes.
Because they'll then enter into a world, which I hope they don't, by the way, but their mindset may enter into a world where they feel entitled to stuff, or they've had it so easy that seeing difficulty or the real hard life like you and I have seen on the streets is something that they aren't going to be ready for. And it's a difficult balance, isn't it, Saj?
Yeah, because you don't want them to experience what we've experienced, because it's tough, it's not easy. You don't want them to have that, they're your flesh and blood, you want them to be comfortable. But it is really difficult to get that balance. How do you get that balance where you give them everything they want? It's a case on the birthday, what do you get them? Well, they've got everything they want or need. What do you get for them? Yeah. And when you're in that situation, it's a case of they never need to think about where the next thing is going to come from. I think it's super tough, and that's something I really don't have the answer for. I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Well, you're trying to do the best that you can, don't you, really? So, being Asian, you were brought up to some extent to think about having a house that's cashed up.
Yes.
Generally speaking, okay, because that is pretty much the epitome of success. You know, your house must be cashed up, and if you buy other property, that should be cashed up as well. You've gone from there to a place where you've leveraged debt, okay, or assets to get to where you can get to. How did you break from that mindset, or at least that upbringing, where you were told everything has to be cash, don't even get a car on finance, if you can afford it, pay cash, if you can't afford to pay cash, don't buy it until you've got the money, to then say, okay, I want to be comfortable with debt and leverage and using other people's money? That is a hard transition, and I say that because obviously I've been through that as well, but I'd be interested to see what process you went through, or if it just happened by chance. How did you break through though?
I think when we talk about cash out, essentially we're saying be debt free. That's what we're saying. Don't owe anybody any money, and only buy what you can afford. And my granddad, I remember, God bless his soul, he used to constantly say to me, even if it's cheap now and you can't afford it, you shouldn't buy it. It might be expensive later, but buy it when you can afford it. And so the point being, just don't get in any debt. And I agree that was kind of ingrained in you early. And when I did get into exploring and understanding property, one of the two of the earliest books I read, which is probably the ones many people read, is Rich Dad Poor Dad, one of the books. And the idea of good debt and bad debt. What do you mean good debt and bad debt? Is there such a thing?
All debt's bad, we can have debt.
That's what we believe. And essentially what we're saying, if you're utilising debt and you're making money from that debt and servicing the debt, well, actually that makes sense. So that's so that to me made sense from that point of view. That's kind of how I've thought about it, and then we can get all the different kinds of conversations around, in terms of with interest, is it allowed in our faith, and how different people treat that, and all these things. But the basic concept of good debt and bad debt is really where my kind of understanding of different types of debt came from.
Yeah, I think I saw it either yesterday or the day before where you were talking about halal mortgages or Sharia compliant. But we'd be sat here all day if we did that.
If we open that can of worms.
Yeah, because I did a master's in Islamic finance.
Okay.
And we'll be here for way too long, by the way. So we'll park that one up
for another day.
Yeah, and so that's going to get picked up. Talking about courses and self-development, personal development, improvement. Again, this is my last point, focusing on our background being Asian, and then we're going to move on to other things. Is sometimes I find the community perhaps doesn't appreciate that. We appreciate doctors, dentists, accountants, lawyers, going to university, having that education. But I find once people qualify as professionals, and I'm generalising here, by the way, this doesn't apply to every single person, but this is my observation over the last 20 years or 19 years of being in business. When you talk to them about personal development, they kind of give you a look in terms of, that's just a bit woo-woo, it's a waste of time. He says, I'm going to spend 10, 15, 20,000 pounds, I don't get anything. Okay, you're the daft one doing all that stuff, you don't need to. How much did personal development help and assist you to get to where you are today?
I think if I break that down to a couple of things, as an entrepreneur, many people in business, solopreneurs, can relate to what I'm going to say now. Is you kind of create your own drive. You have that drive, that motivation, because no one's going to put food on the table unless you get up your backside and you're going to do something. There's going to be no check at the end of the week saying this is your wages. So when you decide to go down that route, you're almost like self-driven. There has to be a degree of self-motivation already there.
Yeah.
But there is also a very isolating world when you run businesses, because you might employ one person, you might employ 50 people, but you can't have certain conversations with them, with your staff, around money, motivation, leadership, how you run things. So you're almost like you're in this isolated world, and you've got to keep yourself focused and driven. You keep going, and then that's where you can suffer from mental health, from breakdowns, from depression, because it's very isolating. So you've got to stay positive and always being very positive. I said, look, as long as God wills it, that's the only thing that could prevent me from achieving what I'm going to do. That's it. And that's my core belief. So there's nothing that's going to stop me. I'm just going to keep going. That's it. Whatever happens, if I fall off, I'm going to get up again. If I fall off, I'm going to get up again. I just ain't going to stop. That's just my thinking. But at the same time, I just assumed everybody was the same. Everybody thinks like that because you don't know any different. But when I got into the world of property and I started meeting people in the corporate world and stuff, and because I didn't really have that much experience of corporate, because I ran a small business servicing local businesses and stuff, and that was it. Now, at that time, people were talking about personal development. You need to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and all these other personal development.
Rich.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the second book I mentioned. The first two books that many people talk about, and I read those. And I kind of get it, but where's the property element in this? They talk to me about property. I'm thinking, give me the property information. Why is everybody talking about this? And it took me a little bit of time to understand the mindset. Actually, everybody doesn't think the same way. Not everybody necessarily has that drive and motivation. And the motivation is what I love, because I kind of already had that interest anyway. But I didn't know there was a whole world that existed that helped you with this, that could support you with this, and the knowledge you can get as well. So I kind of reveled in that and just kind of soaked up as much as I could possibly get. And this was kind of really whether you could find stuff on YouTube and things as well, like everywhere now. Information is at our fingertips right now. So for me, it was very interesting coming to that world, but also a shock that other people don't think in that way. Other people aren't driven, they aren't focused, but a massive realization that actually, yes, we do need this. And I've had a huge amount of benefit from this. So when someone says to me, I think these things are a waste of money and this and that, and I don't even try to persuade them otherwise. Yeah, absolutely, it could be. And I just leave it to that. I'm not interested in kind of trying to persuade them. No, you need to invest in yourself. If you were going to want to become a dentist, how much money are you going to spend to qualify as a dentist? Why? So that can earn you some money. Because it's self-investment. That's essentially what you're doing. And when we're talking about whether it's education in property or personal development, it's self-development. You're improving yourself. You just don't have a formal qualification or a certificate that you stick on the wall afterwards. That's all we're talking about. Yeah. That's the difference.
I guess that's part of the problem. People want that certificate, don't they? Yeah? People use the word doctor, dentist, accountant, whatever. But
And when I got my first degree and had that picture with my parents taken, and if I think about it, it ultimately was for them. That's what they wanted. Yeah. And it was a great experience and a laugh for me in terms of going through that process and everything, going through university. But ultimately, it was that's what they wanted. Our son's a graduate. He's been to university. There's the certificate on the wall. There's the photo.
Yeah, he's made it. He's done that.
That's it.
He's sorted for life.
Yeah, and somebody. And some of my earlier clients that I went to are people in our community that are running local businesses. Some are massively successful, and when you get into their story, uneducated background, came here, just grafted hard, figured it out. You didn't go to university. Well, I could barely speak English. Qualification? Oh, well, I could do basic maths and that's it.
Someone can't even read or write.
Absolutely. And it's surprising when we see that actually there's so many people like that in the world that exist. So the thing about having a formal qualification is, I believe, is something we create. Two of my kids have been to university. The third one's left college and didn't go to university because I think he'd just do what I did, was dust for 4 years. And I said, there's no point, son, we're not doing that. And especially the amount of debt you come out with now, because it's a case you've got to go to university, I believe, if there's some purpose that it's going to lead you towards. So, my degrees are in business. I don't think there's a huge amount of benefit going to university to do business. If you want to be a dentist, yes, you need to go to university, but probably not many of the things that people go to university for.
Fair enough. And to some extent, I agree with you. I think you're right. If there's a clear need, then absolutely. If not, then there's other things you can do. So now we're going to get kind of a bit deep and dirty with some of your numbers, because I know you really like talking about numbers and your properties. So where are you right now in your property journey in terms of how many properties do you own, Saj?
A few.
Is that 5, 10, 15, 100, 150, 75?
A few that make me comfortable.
Yeah.
So
we're going to be here a long time. Just
I don't dwell into. It's a hot room. I don't dwell into the numbers and stuff for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I think really it's not anybody else's business. It's whether you're in one house or many or whatever. It's not really of. It doesn't make any difference. And secondly, and more importantly, it's almost like it's a red herring. It's what's it mean. So, for example, the way I've built the business was by working with lots of other people. So I have lots of partners. I have lots of partners in my business. I have lots of business partners that I work with, and funding partners as well, in terms of how I structure and set up the business. But ultimately, it's a case of what's it giving you, what's it leading towards. So that I kind of it's something I don't really kind of dwell into.
Okay, so
we can have a long evening, but we ain't gonna get numbers out of me.
we're gonna connect that with that as well. But obviously, you're a property mentor, trainer, guide, guru, call it what you like. So you have a story, and a good story, by the way, where people look up to you. So they want to see what their mentor and guide is doing, by the way. So whether you've got 5 properties or whether you've got 55 properties, it doesn't matter. But I think it gives people some inspiration. Yeah. That's where that question comes from.
Inspiration, definitely. I mean, there's...
So what's the number then?
There's a friend of my father's. My father passed away about 15 years ago, God bless his soul. And his friend in the late 60s got involved in property. And he's very close. His office is very close to ours still now. His son is now running the business, and they're probably a Pakistani family. They're probably worth about 100 million in terms of, and a very humble people. If you meet them, you'd never know. But very business minded, very focused. Accountant actually by background as well.
All accountants are humble, by the way. Real down to earth, nice people. You will hang around to them. And the thing for me is that was inspiring for me. That's inspiring. That it's not inspiring in terms of how much. It's inspiring the journey that they followed, which when you look at it, it was pure consistency. You just carry on doing the same thing. You just keep adding 1, 2 properties. You sell this, you buy this, develop that. And the reality is, the next generation now have taken his business that was there to here. Because then they've now applied, their knowledge, their expertise, modern thinking, whatever you want to call it. So that's what I see as inspiration. It's a case of how somebody does something. The numbers are, Grant Cardone talks about 3 billion and stuff like this, or whatever the number is, today. But the reality is, when you look at that, it's just bragging. Because when you break it down, Grant Cardone isn't worth 3 billion. He manages 2-3 billion pound of property, no different from a letting agent would, and he has an interesting part of that property. And I'm not taking anything away from what he's done, but I'm trying to put into context the question around numbers, because I often get questions, and I think, why is it even relevant? Yeah, I think, without spending too much time talking about Grant Cardone, it just, I guess, adds to the whole story, doesn't it? And like I said to you, it gives people inspiration. But also, let's say the number's 50, and we'll try and get down to it in a couple of minutes.
The reality is, actually, I wouldn't even know exactly how many tenants we've got paying us how much money. The letting agency that I own takes care of it.
We're going to work out the numbers in a minute, okay? That's my
True
job.
accountancy
That's
style.
my job. But it just, it gives people, like I said, inspiration, confidence. If Saj had a hard upbringing, parents couldn't speak English, okay? Went to a normal comprehensive school, I assume.
Bad comprehensive.
And he's gone there. He's got 50 properties now. And number's a number, whether it's 50 or 500, I guess it doesn't matter. So I see what you're saying in terms of it's nobody's business. No one really cares, by the way.
And the reality is they don't.
But because you and I, alongside some of our other friends and colleagues, are in the world of being trainers and educators, okay, and gurus, so to speak, or experts, call it whatever you like. I think that word's overused. So people just like to know, okay, well, Saj's got 50 property, okay, I wonder how he got there, I wonder what he did. Yeah. So it's just...
Well, let's look at it in a slightly...
adding to the
I understand that. Let's look at it in a slightly different context. So what we're saying is, I put myself up there and say, look, I help and train other people. People say, well, what have you done if you're gonna train me? How many have you got?
Right,
that's the first question. Yeah. And when I was networking, that's the first question I'd bump into. Oh, so how long you come to property events? So how many properties have you got? That was like the first question I went about. And very quickly, I realised that question has no relevance. It's very shallow in terms of what you learn about somebody in that way. What I'm more interested in, if I'm looking to learn from somebody, is what have they done? What experience have they got? How can they benefit from me? And then I think about, ultimately, when I'm always growing, improving, learning. I have many mentors myself that are kind of help and support me in different areas of my business. And what I look for when I'm picking a mentor is, have they done the thing that I want to do? that they can shortcut my learning in. That's what I'm looking for. And that splits into two ways for me, as a mentor and a coach. A coach, for example, is somebody who's going to help you get the best out of you. So, for example, Tiger Woods' coach isn't a better golfer than Tiger Woods, but he can help him get, improve his performance. But a mentor will be somebody who's already done the things and trodden down that route and can share their experience on a specific thing that they've done. And that's how I look for, who I'm looking for help with. And I think that's much more important. That's my personal view when we're looking for people to learn from.
That's so good and great, but our views are different to you. They're not like you, see. They want to know this stuff, and that's why
there's nothing special about me.
That's why
my wife tells me regularly.
That's why we ask. No comment, by the way. But you're right. Obviously, the difference between a mentor and a coach. A mentor's been there, done it. A coach is somebody who hasn't done it, but has the knowledge and expertise to support you and knows how it can be done.
Yeah.
Because either they've supported somebody else, or they've understood a particular system or process, or they know how to get the best out of people for them to become good at that one thing, whatever that one thing may be. So, in terms of your annual kind of rent roll, how much is that then? You should know that.
It's a nice number.
Is it a six-figure number?
It's a nice number. Hey, look, I'll tell you what I'll do. We'll park it on numbers on that. I have a few hundred tenants that pay us rent every month.
So that's
about as far as we'll go on numbers.
Yeah.
We won't go any more on numbers.
You've got a few hundred tenants.
I might need a top up in a minute.
Yeah, that's fine, okay. Kieran, he has neat vodka, that's all he ever... Oh, he's on camera, sorry. I'm joking, more water for him, please, mate. Well, if you got a few hundred tenants, I'll call that 300 and pay you, even if you said they pay you £75 each, we'll very quickly get to where you are. So that's all I wanted to know, by the way. That's all I wanted to know.
That's as much as I'm going to give you.
That's fine. You've got me to where I want to go to. I might come back to the numbers a bit later on, because Kieran and I have done...
I might try and evade you again.
Have done some research. Okay,
I can tell the amount of pages of notes you've got there.
We might push you harder.